The hegemony's wrath hung like a predatory shadow against Earth's blue-white curve, its obsidian hull absorbing starlight rather than reflecting it. Colonel Kesper Vox stood before the panoramic view screen, hands clasped behind his back, watching the planet rotate slowly beneath him. It was beautiful in a primitive way, unspoiled compared to the ecumenopolises of the core worlds, yet remarkably developed for a pre-contact civilization. "Status report," Vox demanded, not turning from the view. Captain Azura Pell approached, data tablet in hand. "All systems nominal, Colonel. Cloak functioning at optimal parameters. Earth's primitive detection systems remain blind to our presence." Vox nodded, satisfaction evident in his sharp features. At 52 standard years, he was young for his rank, a testament to his ruthless efficiency in the service of the hegemony. His platinum blonde hair was regulation short, and his eyes, artificially enhanced to a metallic silver, reflected the blue glow of Earth. "And the survey is complete?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Comprehensive analysis of all major defense installations, power grids, communication networks, and population centers. We've identified the optimal targets for the first wave." Captain Pell's voice was clinically detached, as befitted an officer of the collection fleet. The year was 2287 by Earth's primitive calendar. To the hegemony, it was the 593rd year of expansion, and Earth, designation TL3742, a Class 4 developing world, was merely the latest acquisition in a centuries-long campaign of galactic conquest. The hegemony had identified Earth nearly a century earlier, but had chosen to wait, to observe from afar as the humans developed just enough technology to make their resources valuable, but remained too primitive to mount an effective defense. That time had come. "And your assessment, Captain?" Vox finally turned from the view screen, fixing Pell with his unnerving metallic gaze. Pell was taller than Vox, but deferred to his authority with practiced ease. Her dark skin contrasted with the stark white of her uniform, and the neural implant at her temple pulsed softly with internal communications. "Standard resistance, sir. Their military capabilities are fragmented, with no unified planetary defense. Their most advanced weapon systems are nuclear-based with limited orbital reach. No energy shields. No gravimetric manipulation. No faster-than-light capabilities." She paused. "Collection should proceed with minimal casualties to our forces." Vox smiled thinly. "Excellent. And the cultural assessment?" "A diverse planet, sir. Multiple competing nation-states, thousands of languages, religious and philosophical systems. Their information networks are robust but primitive. They still use electronic-based computing." Pell's tone suggested she found this almost quaint. "They show remarkable artistic output for their development stage. Anything worth preserving for the archives?" "Some musical compositions, several architectural styles. The archive division has flagged approximately 3% of their cultural output for collection before sterilization." Vox nodded. The hegemony was not entirely without mercy. They preserved what they deemed worthy before reshaping worlds to their specifications. Earth would be stripped of resources, its population reduced and enslaved, its land repurposed for hegemony needs. But some small fragments of human achievement would survive in the vast archives orbiting the hegemony's capital world. "Very well." Vox straightened his already impeccable uniform. "Signal the fleet. We begin at planetary dawn over their most populous continent." "Asia, sir?" "Yes." Vox returned his gaze to the view screen. "Prepare the kinetic bombardment systems. I want their major defense installations neutralized in the first wave." "As you command, Colonel." As Captain Pell departed to relay his orders, Vox allowed himself a moment of reflection. This would be his 12th collection, but his first as fleet commander. Success here would earn him the rank of general and a place in the hegemony's inner circle. After decades of service, climbing through the ranks, he was one planetary conquest away from achieving everything he had ever wanted. "Sir," the voice came from Lieutenant Drell Corva, the communications officer. "We're receiving unusual signal patterns from the planetary surface." Vox frowned. "Explain." "There's been a significant increase in encrypted transmissions in the last hour, far above normal patterns for this time in their day-night cycle." "Have they detected us?" Vox's voice sharpened. "Negative, sir. Our cloaking technology exceeds their detection capabilities by several orders of magnitude. But something has changed in their communication patterns." Vox considered this information. "Monitor and analyze. It's likely nothing, perhaps a major news event or some political development." He dismissed the concern with a wave of his hand. Earth has no unified government. Their fractured nation-states are constantly in communication. "Yes, sir," Corva replied, though a hint of uncertainty lingered in their voice. Vox returned his attention to the tactical display. The collection fleet consisted of 17 warships, including the flagship Hegemony's Wrath. It was overkill for a world like Earth, but the Hegemony believed in overwhelming force. Resistance would be crushed quickly. Survivors would witness the futility of opposition, and collection would proceed efficiently. "Colonel," called Pax Nuri from the sensor station, "I'm detecting unusual energy fluctuations from Earth's moon." Vox turned sharply. "The moon? Their records show only abandoned research stations there." "Yes, sir, but I'm registering power signatures inconsistent with their known technology." This was unexpected. Vox strode to the sensor station, examining the readings himself. "Magnify and analyze." The holographic display zoomed in on Earth's lone satellite. The readings were unusual, faint, but distinct energy patterns emanating from the far side of the moon, hidden from Earth's view. "How did we miss this in our preliminary scans?" Vox demanded. Nuri looked troubled. "The signatures weren't present during our initial survey, sir. They've only just activated." "Could it be a response to our presence?" "Impossible, sir. Our cloaking is not infallible." Vox cut in. "Nothing is." He straightened, mind racing through scenarios. "Adjust our position. I want continuous monitoring of those energy signatures, and bring the fleet to combat readiness." "Sir," Captain Pell had returned to the bridge. "Is there a problem?" "Possibly," Vox replied. "Unexpected energy signatures from Earth's moon. It may be nothing, but I don't believe in coincidences. Captain." "Shall we delay the operation?" Vox considered the question briefly. "No. We proceed as planned. If anything, this development makes it more imperative that we strike quickly." He turned to address the bridge crew. "All stations, prepare for combat operations. We decloak in 30 minutes and begin the first wave of kinetic strikes immediately after." The bridge hummed with activity as officers relayed commands and systems powered up. Vox returned to the view screen, studying Earth with newfound intensity. The planet looked peaceful, unsuspecting. Soon that would change. "Sir," Corva called out, "the encrypted transmissions have intensified. They're following a pattern now, coordinated bursts across all continents." Vox felt the first stirring of unease. "Show me!" The tactical display shifted to show a global map of Earth, pulsing with thousands of communication signals, moving in waves across continents. "That's not random," Captain Pell observed. "No," Vox agreed. "It's too coordinated." He made a swift decision. "Accelerate our timeline. Decloak now and begin bombardment immediately." "Sir?" Pell questioned. "Something's happening down there." "Captain, I don't intend to give them time to prepare." Vox's voice hardened. "Execute my orders." The massive Hegemony warships shimmered into visibility, their cloaking fields dissolving to reveal sleek, angular vessels of impossible darkness. Weapon systems hummed to life, targeting Earth's major military installations, power plants, and command centers. "Kinetic projectiles armed and ready," announced Lieutenant Janto Mira from the weapon station. "Fire," Vox commanded. The first wave launched. Thousands of hypervelocity projectiles, Simple in design, but devastating in impact. They streaked toward Earth, leaving faint trails of ionized atmosphere in their wake. On the view screen, the projectiles appeared as tiny points of light against Earth's blue expanse. Vox watched impassively as they descended toward their targets. The bombardment would disable Earth's military capabilities without causing excessive civilian casualties. The hegemony preferred intact infrastructure and populations they could exploit. Impact in 5 seconds, Mira reported. Vox waited for the satisfaction that always came with a well-executed first strike. Instead, he felt that nagging sense of unease grow stronger. "Sir!" Nuri's voice rose sharply from the sensor station. "The projectiles! They're deviating from their trajectories." "What?" Vox spun toward the tactical display. The screen showed the impossible. Kinetic projectiles changing course mid-flight, veering away from their intended targets. "Explain!" Vox demanded. "Unknown technology, sir," Nuri replied, hands flying over controls. "Some kind of localized gravitational manipulation." "That's impossible," Pell stated flatly. "Earth doesn't possess gravitational technology." Yet, the evidence was undeniable. The kinetic projectiles were being diverted, their trajectories bent as if passing through gravitational lenses. Some were redirected into the ocean, others into uninhabited areas. "Sir, we have multiple launches from Earth's surface," Corvo reported, alarm evident in their voice. The tactical display updated, showing hundreds of missile launches from sites across the planet, many from locations not identified as military installations in their intelligence. "Defensive capabilities only," Pell said, though her confidence sounded forced. "Their missiles can't reach orbit." "Sir," Nuri interrupted, "these aren't conventional missiles. They're utilizing some form of gravimetric propulsion." Vox felt cold realization wash over him. "How is this possible? Our intelligence was wrong," Pell finished quietly. The Earth missiles accelerated at impossible speeds, crossing the distance to the hegemony fleet in minutes rather than hours. Their trajectories were precise, coordinated in ways that suggested advanced targeting systems far beyond what Earth should possess. "Evasive maneuvers," Vox ordered. "All ships, raise shields and prepare point defense systems." The hegemony fleet responded, massive warships pivoting with surprising agility, energy shields flaring to life around their hulls. Point defense lasers began tracking the incoming missiles, destroying some in brilliant flashes of light. But there were too many, and they moved too quickly, too unpredictably. "Impact imminent!" Mira shouted. The first missiles struck the shields of the outer vessels. Instead of conventional explosions, they generated localized gravitational distortions, miniature singularities that warped and stressed the hegemony's energy shields beyond their design parameters. "Shield failures reported on the Indomitable and the Subjugator," Corva relayed, reading incoming fleet communications. Vox gripped the command rail, knuckles white. "Launch all fighter squadrons. Target their launch sites." Fighter craft poured from the hegemony vessels, sleek and predatory, diving toward Earth's atmosphere. But as they descended, new threats emerged. "Colonel, we have aircraft rising from Earth's surface," Nuri reported. "Hundreds of them, using the same gravimetric technology." The tactical display updated again, showing swarms of Earth fighters rising to meet the hegemony forces. They were smaller, but more agile, and their movements suggested a level of maneuverability that should have been impossible for a pre-contact civilization. "This can't be happening," Pell murmured beside him. Vox said nothing, watching as his carefully planned operation disintegrated into chaos. Earth fighters engaged the hegemony squadrons, proving themselves not just capable, but superior. Their gravimetric drives allowed them to make turns and accelerations that the hegemony pilots couldn't match. And their weapons, some kind of focused gravitational distortion, tore through fighter shields with ease. "Sir, we've lost 30% of our fighter complement," Mira reported grimly. Vox's mind raced. How had they been so wrong? How had Earth concealed this level of technology? And more importantly, what else were they hiding? Colonel, Corva's voice cut through his thoughts. I'm detecting massive energy buildups from multiple points on Earth's surface. What kind of energy? Vox demanded. Unknown, sir. Nothing in our database matches the signature. Sir, Nuri called out. The moon, the energy signatures are intensifying dramatically. Vox looked up at the main view screen, just in time to see Earth's moon seemingly come alive with light. Patterns of energy spread across its surface like luminous veins, converging on the far side. What in the seven hells is that? Someone whispered. Before anyone could answer, the space between the moon and Earth distorted visibly, as if reality itself was being bent. A massive portal opened, a swirling vortex of energy unlike anything in hegemony records. And through it came ships. Not just any ships, but vessels of clearly alien design. Hundreds of them, pouring through the portal in a coordinated battle formation. Multiple contacts, Nuri shouted. Unnecessary now, as everyone on the bridge could see the armada emerging from the portal. Sir, I'm counting over 500 vessels of various configurations. Origins? Vox asked, his voice tight. Sir, they bear markings from multiple civilizations. I'm identifying Arcturian, Telian, and... Sir, some of these designs aren't in our database at all. A cold realization settled in Vox's stomach. This wasn't just an unexpectedly advanced Earth. This was a coalition force, including species from across the galaxy, many of whom the hegemony had believed to be unaligned or even extinct. Sir, Corva interrupted, we're receiving a transmission. It's being broadcast on all hegemony frequencies simultaneously. Vox straightened his uniform with trembling hands. On screen. The view screen shifted to show a human woman in a uniform Vox didn't recognize. Her dark hair was pulled back severely, and her expression was one of calm authority. Behind her stood representatives of at least a dozen alien species, including several Vox recognized immediately. An Arcturian general with his distinctive crest, a Telian commander with her characteristic bioluminescent skin markings, and even a Folian ambassador, a species the hegemony had supposedly subjugated decades ago. This is Colonel Alexandra Powell of the Earth Defense Force, the woman announced, her voice crisp and commanding. You are surrounded by the combined forces of the Acral Alliance. Your fleet is outmatched and outgunned. Power down your weapon systems and prepare to be boarded. Vox stared at the screen in disbelief. The Acral Alliance? There is no such entity. Powell's expression remained impassive. The Acral Alliance has existed for over a century. Colonel Vox, we've been waiting for you, preparing for you. Impossible, Vox breathed, though the evidence before his eyes said otherwise. Your long-range scans detected Earth centuries ago. Powell continued. Did you really think we wouldn't detect you in return? That we would sit idly by, waiting for the hegemony to come and collect us, as you've done to so many others? Vox's mind reeled. This contradicted everything he knew about Earth, about the galaxy, about the hegemony's supremacy. Sir, Pell whispered urgently beside him, the alien fleet has us surrounded. Our tactical analysis indicates their firepower exceeds ours by a factor of at least 5. Vox barely heard her, his attention fixed on the human colonel and her impossible coalition. I'll give you one opportunity. Colonel Vox, Powell said. Surrender your fleet now, and no further harm will come to your people. Refuse, and we will be forced to demonstrate exactly how outmatched you truly are. Pride and training warred with survival instinct in Vox's mind. The hegemony did not surrender. It conquered, collected, consumed. But he had also been trained to recognize unwinnable scenarios, to preserve hegemony assets when possible. Sir, Pell urged, 2 of our ships have already been crippled. The subjugator is reporting catastrophic system failures. Vox closed his eyes briefly, the weight of the decision pressing down on him like a gravitational singularity. When he opened them again, his voice was hollow. "Stand down, all weapons. Power down offensive systems." The bridge crew stared at him in shock. "Do it," he commanded, his voice regaining some of its authority. "And open a channel to Colonel Powell." Corva complied, and moments later, Powell's face reappeared on the screen. "Colonel Powell," Vox began, forcing dignity into his defeat. "I am prepared to discuss terms." Powell nodded once. "Wise decision. Maintain your current position. Boarding parties will arrive shortly to secure your vessels. Any attempt to reactivate weapons or propulsion systems will be met with immediate and overwhelming force." The transmission cut, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. "Sir," Captain Pell said quietly, "what happens now?" Vox stared at the view screen, now showing the vast alien armada surrounding his hopelessly outmatched fleet. Earth glowed blue and white beyond, no longer looking primitive and vulnerable, but suddenly formidable and mysterious. "Now, Captain," he replied, "we face the consequences of our miscalculation." The corridors of the Lunar Defense Station hummed with activity as Vox was escorted under heavy guard. 3 days had passed since the surrender of his fleet, and this was his first time off the hegemony's wrath. The station itself was a marvel of engineering, built within and beneath the lunar surface, completely hidden from Earth-based observation, a secret fortress that had apparently existed for decades without the hegemony's knowledge. His guards, 2 humans and an Arcturian, led him through security checkpoints with efficiency that spoke of long preparation. They eventually arrived at a door marked simply Interrogation 3 in multiple languages, including standard hegemony script. Inside, Colonel Powell waited, seated at a simple table. She dismissed the guards with a nod. "Please, sit," she said, gesturing to the chair opposite her. Vox complied, noting that while the chair appeared simple, it contained subtle restraint systems that could activate remotely. The Acral Alliance was taking no chances. "I trust your accommodations have been adequate," Powell asked, her tone professionally neutral. "I am a prisoner of war," Vox replied stiffly. "The accommodations are irrelevant." Powell smiled slightly. "Actually, Colonel, your status is somewhat more complicated than that. There was no formal declaration of war. By hegemony definitions, you were engaged in what your own protocols term collection, essentially piracy and planned genocide." Vox stiffened. "The hegemony does not recognize the sovereignty of pre-contact civilizations. Our actions were legal under imperial law." "Your laws," Powell countered, "not ours, and certainly not those of the Galactic Concord." "The Galactic Concord is a myth," Vox said automatically. "Hegemony intelligence has confirmed this repeatedly." Powell's smile widened fractionally. "Has it? Or has the hegemony simply been fed exactly what the Concord wanted you to believe?" Uncertainty flickered across Vox's face before he could suppress it. The events of the past 3 days had shaken his confidence in hegemony intelligence to its core. "Let me tell you a story, Colonel," Powell said, leaning forward slightly. "About 200 years ago, Earth detected the first hegemony probes at the edge of our solar system. We were primitive then, by your standards, barely reaching our own moon, still burning fossil fuels. But we weren't blind, and we certainly weren't stupid." She activated a holographic display embedded in the table, showing historical images of early human space exploration. "We knew we were being watched, assessed, cataloged, and we knew why. Human history is full of encounters between technologically mismatched civilizations. The outcomes are rarely favorable for the less advanced society." Powell's eyes hardened. "So we made a choice. On the surface, we would appear to develop along expected lines, gradually, predictably, remaining vulnerable. But beneath that facade, we would prepare. The hologram shifted to show vast underground facilities, lunar constructions, hidden research centers. We created a global secret, Powell continued. Perhaps the only secret ever kept by the entire human race. While we appeared to squabble over petty differences, we were unified in our determination to survive. We developed technologies in secret, focused on areas we believed would give us tactical advantages. Gravitational manipulation, for instance. Impossible, Vox muttered. No single species could maintain such a deception for centuries. You underestimate what fear can accomplish, Colonel. And more importantly, you underestimate what hope can inspire. Powell gestured, and the hologram changed again, showing humans meeting with representatives of alien species. About 50 years after we detected your probes, we were contacted by the Arcturians. Vox's eyes widened involuntarily. The Arcturians are a subjected species. They've been under hegemony control for over a century. Not all of them, came a deep voice from the doorway. Vox turned to see an Arcturian male enter, tall, imposing, with the distinctive head crest of a high-ranking military officer. Colonel Vox, meet General Lorvanth of the Arcturian Free Forces, Powell introduced, one of our oldest allies. Lorvanth took a position behind Powell, fixing Vox with a penetrating gaze. My people appeared to submit to the hegemony. Yes. Those who remained in Arcturian space play the role of obedient subjects. But millions escaped, hidden by technology similar to your cloaking devices. We built new homes, new fleets, and waited. For what? Vox asked, genuinely confused now. For the right moment, Powell answered. The Arcturians weren't alone. The Telians, the Folians, the Dorax, dozens of species who had either escaped hegemony collection or were next on your list. They found us, guided by the Conquered, and we formed the Acral Alliance. The Conquered doesn't exist, Vox insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. Powell exchanged glances with Lorvanth, then nodded to someone behind Vox. The door opened again, and a new figure entered, humanoid but clearly not human, with pale blue skin and eyes that seemed to contain galaxies. Colonel Kesper Vox, Powell said formally, allow me to introduce Ambassador Zyla Howell of the Galactic Conquered. Vox stared at the being, unable to place their species in any hegemony taxonomy. The Concord has existed for 50,000 of your years, Colonel, the ambassador said, their voice melodious and strangely comforting despite the circumstances. We are the oldest continuous civilization in this arm of the galaxy. We do not conquer or collect. We observe, we guide, and when necessary, we intervene. If you're so powerful, why allow the hegemony to exist at all? Vox challenged, finding his voice. Ambassador Howell smiled enigmatically. The universe requires balance, Colonel. Civilizations must find their own paths. The hegemony's aggression has, ironically, fostered unprecedented cooperation among its potential victims. The Acral Alliance would not exist without the threat you posed. We've been waiting for this moment for generations, Powell added. Earth was the bait, Colonel. We made ourselves appear vulnerable, knowing the hegemony would eventually come for us. And when you did, you sprung the trap, Vox finished, realization dawning. This was never about defending Earth. It was about drawing the hegemony's fleet into a vulnerable position. Not just any fleet, Lorvanth rumbled. Your collection fleet represents nearly 30% of the hegemony's military strength. And now we have it. Vox felt sick. The implications were staggering. If the Acral Alliance truly had representatives of dozens of species, including those supposedly under hegemony control, and if they had the backing of this mysterious Concord, what happens now? He asked quietly. Now, said Ambassador Howell, the rebalancing begins. Even as we speak, Acral forces are moving against key hegemony installations throughout the galaxy. Resistance cells on occupied worlds are rising up. The collection fleet's failure to report back has triggered exactly the response we anticipated. The hegemony has dispatched additional forces to investigate, further weakening their defensive positions elsewhere. Vox slumped in his chair. Everything he had believed, everything he had fought for, was crumbling before his eyes. "The hegemony is vast," he said. "Even with our fleet captured, even with resistance on subjected worlds, you cannot hope to defeat the entire empire." "We don't need to defeat every ship, every soldier," Powell replied. "We only need to break the illusion of hegemony invincibility. Your empire rules through fear, Colonel. Once that fear is gone, the subjected worlds will do the rest." She leaned forward, her expression intense. "But you can help minimize the bloodshed." "You want me to betray the hegemony," Vox stated flatly. "I want you to help save lives, including those of your own people," Powell corrected. "The hegemony as you know it is finished, Colonel. That's not a threat. It's simply a fact. The only question now is how many more will die in its collapse." Vox looked from Powell to Lorvanth, to the enigmatic Ambassador Howell. His mind raced through scenarios, seeking some path where the hegemony might still prevail. He found none. "What do you want from me?" he asked finally. "Information," Powell replied simply. "Fleet deployments, security protocols, command structures, ways to disable hegemony systems with minimal casualties. The location of prisoner worlds where subjected populations are held." Vox closed his eyes briefly. Everything in his training, in his indoctrination, screamed against cooperation. But a deeper part of him, a part that had always questioned, always doubted, whispered that Powell was right. The hegemony's defeat was inevitable now. The only choice left was whether to be on the right side of history. "And if I help you," he asked, opening his eyes again, "then you'll be treated as a cooperating prisoner of war, not a war criminal," Powell said. "And when this is over, you'll have the opportunity to help build something better than the empire you served." Vox sat in silence, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Finally, he spoke. "The subjugator carries the master encryption keys for the Western Galactic Quadrant. With those, you could disable the automated defense systems on 7 major hegemony outposts without firing a shot." Powell nodded, her expression revealing nothing. And there are 3 prison worlds in that same quadrant. Millions of captives from a dozen species. I can give you their exact coordinates and the security protocols." "That would be a start," Powell acknowledged. "But I need to know if we can trust you, Colonel. Why are you willing to help us now?" Vox looked down at his hands, then back up at Powell, his artificially silver eyes meeting her natural brown ones. "Because you've shown me something the hegemony never could." "And what's that?" "A better story," Vox replied simply. "The hegemony's narrative was always about dominance, about the natural order of predator and prey. Your Acral Alliance, your Concord, you've written a different story. One about cooperation, about diverse species finding strength together rather than tearing each other apart." He gave a small, bitter laugh. "And you made us believe your deception because it fit our expectations. We saw what we wanted to see. A vulnerable, divided Earth, ripe for collection. We never imagined you could be orchestrating a galaxy-wide resistance." Ambassador Howell stepped forward, those galaxy eyes studying Vox with ancient wisdom. "Stories are powerful things, Colonel Vox. They shape how we see the universe and our place within it. The hegemony's story was one of endless conquest. Ours is one of balance and cooperation." "And now you want me to change my story," Vox said quietly. "We want you to see that you always had a choice," Powell corrected. "Even now, you have a choice. Help us end this with as little bloodshed as possible." Vox thought of his crew, of the billions serving the hegemony across the galaxy, many of them, like himself, born into a system they never questioned. What would happen to them in this new reality? As if reading his thoughts, Ambassador Howell spoke again. The conquered does not seek vengeance. Colonel, those who choose peace will find it. Those who cling to the old ways. The ambassador shrugged, an oddly human gesture. They will face the consequences of that choice. Decision crystallized in Vox's mind. He straightened in his chair, something of his military bearing returning. I'll need access to secure communication channels. There are commanders in the fleet who will listen to me, who might stand down if they understand the situation. Powell nodded. That can be arranged, under supervision. And I'll need detailed star charts of this region. If the hegemony sends reinforcements, I can help predict their approach vectors. Provided, Lorvanth rumbled from behind Powell. Vox took a deep breath. Then, let's begin. The primary command codes for the collection fleet are stored in a secure database on the hegemony's Wrath. I can show you how to access them. As Vox began sharing the first of many hegemony secrets, he felt a strange sensation, like a weight lifting from his shoulders. For the first time in his life, he was making a choice not dictated by imperial protocol or ambition. It was terrifying and liberating in equal measure. Outside the interrogation room, through viewports lining the corridor, Earth hung in the black void, blue, white, and brown. Deceptively peaceful from this distance. But Vox now knew the truth. That small planet had orchestrated the greatest deception in galactic history, had united disparate species across vast distances, had waited patiently for generations, all leading to this moment. They had been ready, more than ready. They had turned the hegemony's greatest strength, its arrogance, into a fatal weakness. And as he outlined hegemony defense systems to his former enemies, Kesper Vox realized that Earth had never been the prey. It had been the hunter all along. 2 weeks after the surrender of the collection fleet, Vox stood on an observation deck of the Concord diplomatic vessel, Harmonious Accord. Through the vast, transparent dome, he could see Earth, the Moon, and the scattered remains of the hegemony fleet, now being systematically disassembled by Acral engineers, their technology studied and repurposed. It's strange, he said to Powell, who stood beside him. From here, Earth still looks so vulnerable. Powell smiled slightly. That was rather the point, Colonel. In the days following his decision to cooperate, Vox had provided invaluable intelligence to the Acral Alliance. His knowledge of hegemony protocols had allowed them to disable defense systems across 3 sectors without a single casualty. 17 hegemony commanders had responded to his secured transmissions by standing down their forces rather than fighting a losing battle. Not all had been so wise. Reports from across the galaxy told of fierce resistance in some sectors, of hegemony loyalists choosing destruction over surrender. But the tide had decisively turned. The myth of hegemony invincibility had been shattered, and subjected worlds were rising up faster than Imperial forces could respond. I've been authorized to show you something, Powell said, activating a small, holographic projector. This was recorded yesterday on Telnar Fu. The hologram showed a vast crowd gathered in what Vox recognized as the central plaza of a hegemony administrative center. The Imperial banners were being lowered, replaced by symbols Vox didn't recognize. Telnar 4 was one of the first worlds the hegemony collected, nearly 200 years ago. Powell explained. Yesterday, they declared independence. There was no bloodshed. The hegemony administrators surrendered when they realized reinforcements weren't coming. Vox watched the celebration unfolding in the hologram, trying to reconcile it with everything he'd been taught about the necessity of hegemony rule, about the chaos that would supposedly ensue if subjected worlds were left to govern themselves. It won't all be so peaceful, he said finally. No, Powell agreed. Some transitions will be difficult. Bloody, even. But the Concord has experience with this, helping worlds recover from imperial collapse, establishing self-governance. She deactivated the hologram and turned to face him directly. Which brings me to the reason I asked you here today. The Conquered has a proposal for you. Vox raised an eyebrow. For me? I assumed my fate was to be a permanent prisoner, or to stand trial for collection crimes. That was one possibility, Powell acknowledged. But Ambassador Howell and the Conquered representatives believe your knowledge and experience could be put to better use. In what way? The hegemony is collapsing. But that doesn't mean everything it built needs to be destroyed. There were benefits to some aspects of imperial infrastructure: standardized communication protocols, trade routes, technological compatibility. The Conquered believes these can be preserved while allowing worlds their independence. Vox began to understand. You want me to help dismantle the hegemony without destroying everything it created? Essentially, yes. Your knowledge of imperial systems is invaluable. And more importantly, you've demonstrated a capacity for change that few hegemony officials have shown. Vox turned back to the viewport, looking out at Earth and the stars beyond. What would this role entail? You would serve as an advisor to the Transition Authority, a joint body of Conquered, Acral, and former hegemony representatives, overseeing the controlled dissolution of imperial power. Your focus would be on minimizing disruption to civilian infrastructure and preserving beneficial systems. It was more than Vox had dared hope for. Not just survival, but purpose. A chance to be part of building something rather than merely collecting and consuming. Why trust me with this? He asked, genuinely curious. How do you know I won't try to preserve hegemony control in some form? Powell's expression softened slightly. Because I've watched you these past 2 weeks. Colonel, I've seen the changes in you as you've learned the truth about the empire you served. The man who arrived in Earth orbit, confident in his righteous mission of collection, is not the same man standing before me now. Vox couldn't deny it. Each new revelation about the hegemony's deceptions, not just toward other worlds but toward its own citizens, had chipped away at his loyalty. Learning that much of what he'd been taught was propaganda, that the supposed natural order of hegemony supremacy was an artificial construct maintained through carefully controlled information. It had transformed him. There's something else you should know, Powell added. The Conquered has been gathering former hegemony citizens who, like you, have chosen to help with the transition. You wouldn't be alone. Hope stirred in Vox's chest. Unexpected. Almost foreign after weeks of shame and uncertainty. I would need assurances that my cooperation won't be used to harm innocent hegemony citizens. Many of them truly believe in the Empire. Not out of malice, but because they've never known anything else. The Conquered's principle is clear on this, Powell replied. No collective punishment. Those who commit atrocities will face justice, but ordinary citizens will be given the opportunity to adapt to the new reality. Vox nodded slowly. Then I accept the Conquered's proposal. Powell extended her hand, a human gesture of agreement that Vox had learned during his time on the Lunar Defense Station. He took it, sealing his commitment to this new path. There's a briefing in 1 hour with the transition team, Powell said. I'll have someone escort you. As she turned to leave, Vox spoke again. Colonel Powell, there's something I've been wanting to ask. She paused. Yes. Earth maintained this deception for generations. Children grew up knowing they were being watched, that someday the hegemony would come. How did you manage it? How did you prevent someone from revealing the truth, from breaking under the pressure? Powell smiled, a genuine expression that reached her eyes. We told stories, Colonel Vox. Stories? Stories of resistance, of hope, of a future where humanity stood among the stars as equals, not subjects. We built it into our entertainment, our literature, our games, preparing each generation for what might come without explicitly breaking our secrecy. She gestured toward Earth, visible through the viewport. Every child on that planet grew up with tales of unlikely heroes facing overwhelming odds, of diverse groups coming together to overcome powerful enemies. We took our fear and transformed it into determination. Vox considered this, remembering Captain Pell's cultural assessment of Earth and its remarkable artistic output. What they had dismissed as primitive entertainment had been preparation, psychological conditioning on a planetary scale. The hegemony underestimated the power of stories, he said quietly. Yes, Powell agreed. You saw what you expected to see, a divided planet of primitives. You never imagined we could be united in purpose, connected to a galactic community, preparing for your arrival for generations. She paused at the doorway. 1 hour, Colonel. The future awaits. After Powell departed, Vox remained at the viewport, watching Earth rotate slowly below. From this distance, he could see the Terminator line, the division between day and night, sweeping across continents. Lights glimmered on the dark side, evidence of human civilization. For centuries, the hegemony had moved through the galaxy like a force of nature, inevitable, unstoppable. They had collected countless worlds, subjugated innumerable species, all in service to an ideology of natural dominance. And all that time, resistance had been growing, connecting, preparing. Earth had been the catalyst, the final piece in a puzzle, centuries in the making. Vox's gaze shifted to the lunar surface, where the hidden defense station had sprung to life at the critical moment. What other secrets did these humans hold? What other preparations had they made that the hegemony had never suspected? A soft chime interrupted his thoughts, a reminder of the approaching briefing. Vox straightened his uniform, no longer the stark white of hegemony command, but the muted gray of a civilian advisor. It felt strange after decades in imperial colors, but also fitting. He was entering a new chapter, helping to write a new story. As he turned from the viewport, Vox's gaze caught a final glimpse of Earth, blue and white against the blackness of space. They had appeared so vulnerable, so ripe for collection. Instead, they had been the architects of the hegemony's downfall. They had waited patiently, hidden their strength, built alliances across the stars. And when the moment came, they had revealed the truth, written across the sky in ships and weapons and unity, that Earth would not mourn quietly. It would fight, it would win, and it would change the galaxy forever. The blue planet receded from view as Vox walked toward his future, leaving behind the certainties of imperial doctrine and embracing the complexities of a new galactic order. The hegemony had thought Earth would surrender without significant resistance. They had been wrong. Earth hadn't just resisted. It had been preparing for this moment across generations, across species, across light years. They had thought Earth would mourn quietly as its freedom was extinguished. Instead, the sky had turned human, filled with the ingenuity, determination, and unexpected alliances that would reshape the stars themselves.